The Colicoids have long fascinated and terrified xenobiologists in equal parts, known for their completely emotionless and murderous ways, viewing all other creatures as a source of food, while also being among the galaxy's great technological innovators. The carnivorous craftsmen behind some of the most fearsome droids and weaponry all throughout the Clone Wars era. So let's pull from every resource available to completely understand this species. Starting off with where they evolved from. Colla 4, often just called Colla, is the homeworld of the Colicoid species, located on the border of the Inner Rim and Expansion region. This terrestrial planet is known for its lush, tropical climate and rich ecosystems, a rich setting that nurtured abundant life and intense competition. Thick equatorial jungles and humid savannas covered much of Colla 4's surface, broken by mountainous hive canyons and canyon networks where the Colicoids established their nests. The climate is warm and stable year-round, ideal for large arthropods to thrive. Like our own Carboniferous era on Earth, Colla 4's atmosphere likely had a high oxygen content, explaining how insectoid fauna grew to such enormous sizes. In these steamy jungles, Colicoid ancestors likely contended with a menagerie of deadly predators, honing their own predatory instincts, as well as defensive adaptations over millions of years, as the entire planet's ecology is defined by fierce predator-prey dynamics. You have to be on the lookout for tooth-spike raptors, a deadly Reptavian carnivore, and the Huchi, a big cat-like apex predator with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Before their extinction, these cats were the only known creatures that preyed on Colicoids. These big cats were the last of their ancient predators before they too were finally made extinct, and the Colicoid became the dominant species on this planet, though their threat forever left a mark on the Colicoid mind. Even today, if a Colicoid catches sight of something that even just resembles a Huche, they instinctively curl into a ball and roll away in blind panic. This reflex, still existing long after they went extinct, shows just how merciless Colla 4's natural selection was. Over countless generations, only Colicoids with the toughest defenses and keenest survival instincts survived the planet's gauntlet of predators and periodic resource scarcity. This resulted in a species that was superbly adapted to outfight, outwit, or just outlast any competition. The modern Colicoid stands at 1.8 to 2 meters tall, and they walk on multiple jointed legs and possess chitinous exoskeletons as tough as battle armor. Their upper bodies are encased in dense, concave carapaces, which can withstand all sorts of attacks in harsh environments. They also had powerful stinging tails, used originally for hunting prey. And certain ones, known as Colicoid queens, grow to more than twice the size of a warrior and carry a unique venom in their stingers, making them especially lethal when defending their nests. Even the ordinary warriors, though, are of course formidable predators. They are carnivorous, but also cannibalistic, using their sharp mandibles and digestive systems to process raw meat, even that chitinous exoskeleton of their brothers. And of course, they made light work of any sentient visitors that were unfortunate enough to stumble upon these jungles. One of their most well-known adaptations was their ability to curl into a tight, armored ball. Much like an armored earth insect or pangolin, a threatened Colicoid can contract its limbs and roll its body, presenting only its hard shell to an attacker. This ball mode evolved as a defense response, the perfect foil to a pouncing Huiche or a charging raptor. But Colicoids also turned this into an offensive strategy. By suddenly unfurling from a rolling state, they could ambush prey with startling speed. Not running you down, but rolling you down, this form of locomotion became second nature to them. And so we see when these insectoids later designed their famous Droideka, this was a crucial component. Destroyer droids folding into wheel-like forms to hurtle themselves into combat, like a Colicoid on the hunt. And of course the three legs are also coming from the Colicoid's own image, simply converting their own evolutionary adaptations into this technological form. Their senses and cognition also reflect their predatory heritage. They have flat, wedge-shaped heads and multifaceted eyes, granting a wide field of vision and acute motion detection in low-light jungle environments. Long, twitching antennae provide an excellent sense of smell and vibration sensing, useful for tracking prey or sensing danger, and they have a nervous system that offers some unusual perks. Their minds are highly resistant to Jedi mind tricks and other Force persuasions. Perhaps their hive mind neural patterns were just so unique that you couldn't apply tactics you learned on Coruscant, being around so many other humanoid-like beings. And no Colicoid Force users have ever been seen. Many think this also points to their minds just being grounded in cold logic rather than having this sensitivity to the spiritual side. Even if midichlorians are in all things, it's like they, as a species, have just sort of cut themselves off. In a unique blend of an intelligent omnivore with the weapons of a beast, and a calculating brain usually seen in a sentient, without all those other hang-ups like morality. And it's these traits that would lay the groundwork for the Colicoids' later leap from mere survival to scientific and technological mastery. Across the species, they organize themselves into nests, each a kind of clan or corporate house with specialized functions. And about a generation before the Clone Wars, they fought a brutal internal war on Colla 4, with carapace cracking across all sorts of nests, but the aftermath of which saw them settle into a rigid hierarchy of specialized nests. At the apex sits the Sovereign Nest, effectively the governing body or ruling hive of all of Colla 4, a one-world bug government. Other nests focused on particular social roles, like the renowned Colicoid Creation Nest, which is devoted to manufacturing and research, functioning much like an immense corporation. Following insectoid tradition, each nest likely has one or more fertile queens at its heart, massive egg-laying females who enjoy privileged status and are tirelessly tended by drones, workers, and warriors. Unlike most pro-social insects, Colicoids are not entirely hive-minded or selfless. Their queens do not mentally dominate the drones, and individual Colicoids actually show a wide range of emotions like you'd see with any other species, having personal cunning and greed, all sorts of motivations. So they're not mindless, but they do seem to buy into this social organization, actually think it's good for them, seeing each of the nests as cooperative corporations, knowing that the hierarchy and traditions that were established were far more productive, and nobody wanted to return to the times of the nest wars. They speak in the resonant clicks and hums of the Colicoid language, which outsiders find nearly impossible to interpret or reproduce. But they are not given to displays of empathy or charm. A famous saying in xenological circles is, quote, "None truly desire to meet a Colicoid." And the reason is very straightforward. They often, showing no emotion at all, just move to eat visitors. And like mentioned before, when times are hard, having too low social rank or importance to the hive meant that you would be eaten. Basically, the lower classes became livestock. And it's no wonder that the early Republic diplomats that arrived here, those first contact events ended in disaster. Even Jedi mediators quickly withdrew and shared the news that they would just try and eat everyone. They have this really unique understanding of business and foreign trade, that all currency is food. All this work and labor at the end of the day is to make sure you get enough calories. And if they saw it as obvious that this person was not crucial, they had no problem eating some lowly worker or some interns that might be accompanying some diplomat. So all were horrified of them, but contact was maintained because they also instantly noticed that they were highly intelligent in a technologically advanced society. Even if they are isolationists by nature, preferring to remain on Colla 4 or in Colicoid-controlled space, their passion for invention has driven them into galactic commerce. Every Colicoid, from lowly drone to regal queen, is raised amidst an ethic of ruthless cunning and cold calculation, and this just got easily transferred over from the hunt to internal warfare and then galactic commerce. What really impressed people is that they did develop the ability to speak Galactic Basic, even if with a harsh, buzzing accent. But they had no qualms with plotting and scheming right in front of Offworlders, chatting away in their own click language, knowing the odds were near 100% that no one else understood what was going on. And to the Jedi's credit, this species really does have a unique disdain for Jedi, perhaps because they are the embodiment of a loftier ideal. This cult teaching that you should be not so attached to this world, not driven purely by the needs of the body, harping on about a spiritual existence, this seemed just utterly pointless to the Colicoid. Just ironic gobbledygook coming out of an embodied being, something that like themselves just required food to live. It isn't the force that binds us all together, it's food. As more and more people became aware of just how food obsessed the Colicoid were, there emerged this really funny saying, quote, "I'd feel safer sleeping next to an Inzadi. At least they only drink your soup, but a Colicoid will eat you whole." The Inzadi, of course, are those vampiric-like beings. But most of the galaxy would know them through the Colicoid Creation Nest, which served as Colla 4's nexus of droid manufacturing, but also weapons development and off-world trade in general. We describe them as being obsessed with scientific advancement and weapon perfection to the level that it is like a religion, a cultural obsession, at which these ideals are at the core. But again, to them it is more practical, not some lofty abstraction, and rivals like Zerka Corporation and Systech have sent teams of analysts to try and unravel the nest's secrets, only to have many of those unfortunate specialists end up joining the great circle of life, food in the bellies of engineers that fueled Colicoid progress. The most famous product would of course be the Droideka, that three-legged, rolling, and shielded terror, whose name Droideka comes from the basic word droid fused with eka, meaning mindless drone in the Colicoid tongue. They were so lethal that the Trade Federation's Neimoidian crews dubbed them rollers, and it really should be stressed that the Colicoids secretly built the Droidekas to be fully autonomous units, which actually defied the Federation's request for a central computer control, just so they could never turn on their Neimoidian overlords. And the deal that secured the Droideka contract is legendary in trade circles, because Viceroy Newt Gunray literally paid the Colicoids with starship loads of fresh meat. 50 barges of exotic live prey to satisfy the price for these new exotic droids. They essentially skipped the middleman, no currency conversions. The whole point of trade was to get you new delicious food, so being compensated in flesh, the Colicoid creation nest gladly delivered its rolling killers to the Separatist cause. They would go on to create the droid Tri-Fighter, whose blaster array was inspired by the skull morphology of a Colla IV Predator. And they designed the Droid-class boarding ship with a bell-shaped hull and spiked prongs modeled after the Tooth-Spike Raptor. And when Separatist leaders demanded greater output late in the war, Colicoids converted their existing maintenance bots into nasty Pistoika sabotage droids. These are the infamous buzz droids released in swarms to cripple Republic starfighters. And they did keep some toys for themselves. On Colla IV, they developed top-secret heavy battle droids like the Scorpinek Annihilator, which were so powerful and expensive that only a handful ever saw action. Though there were some rumors that in the hidden vaults on Colla IV, there may be some held in reserve. Outsiders had no idea that even more dangerous Colicoid creations remained on their homeworld. What was spread throughout the galaxy was scary enough. But perhaps if you bring enough bags of exotic meat, you could walk away with something too. Because they would work with anyone, in theory, though most crime bosses and feudal lords knew of a dark secret in the business that someone from your delegation was likely to be eaten, and this just bred all sorts of layers of betrayal, as some senior diplomat knew that they were essentially embarking on a sort of human sacrifice to these bugs whenever they met with these bugs to talk about some new creation, let alone how bad things could go if there was some disagreement, or if they felt disrespected or the deal fell through entirely. As for their history, like mentioned, there were multiple first contacts. They just all ended in these off-worlders becoming food, but eventually enough well-armed Republic contacts arrived here, set up trade networks, and we get the first of their interactions long ago in the Old Republic era, where they actually played both sides of the Old Republic's Cold War, around 3650 BBY. They openly courted both the Republic and Sith Empire, even staging a deadly Colicoid war game on a remote asteroid, forcing Republic and Imperial representatives to compete in deadly trials for the privilege of Colicoid business. Many traps and even Colicoid warriors were involved in this lethal bidding war. Whoever was killed was eaten, you get to have a live show, and eat whoever was eliminated while talking over business deals with the victor. In the decades leading up to the Clone Wars, they began to emerge from isolation as shadowy power brokers. Following that internal reformation after the Nest Civil Wars, they partook in secret conclaves like the notorious Gathering on Sojourn, where galactic corporate leaders and crime lords met, all being slowly positioned by Darth Plagueis. It was in these years that the Trade Federation struck its grand bargain with the Colicoid Sovereign Nest. Gunray's flesh payment for the Droidekas was around 33 to 32 BBY, and this all firmly aligned the Colicoids with what would become the Confederacy of Independent Systems. When war broke out in 22 BBY, Colla IV openly joined the Separatist Alliance, and supplied it with countless droid fighters, saboteurs, and battle units. A Colicoid representative even sat, literally looming and chittering, in the Separatist parliament, likely salivating at the sight of all these exotic meats gathered around him. Republic forces, of course, were keenly aware of Colla IV's threat, and late in the Clone Wars, the Grand Army launched an assault on Colla IV itself, attempting to neutralize the Droideka factories, cutting them off at the source. The campaign was grueling, as Separatist fleets blockaded Colla IV's orbit, at least one terrifying Scorpinek Annihilator droid personally obliterated an entire Republic commando team on the surface, and the siege ultimately left Colla IV battered but not broken. And truly, this might be the only place in the galaxy that was worse than Umbara. By the war's end and the Separatist fall, the Colicoids suddenly found themselves on the losing side of this galactic war. Under the new Empire, the Colicoids are treated once more into weary isolation, and Emperor Palpatine's xenophobic regime, which distrusted all non-human powers, had little appetite for such an alien species, would not allow for this habit of eating negotiators, and Imperial patrols made sure that these bugs stayed on their world. They had a brief venture into spice mining, since they had seized control of the Kessel spice mines right after the Battle of Naboo, but that was likely taken over by the Imperial or criminal interests since then. Imposing a strict blockade on Colla 4, the bugs were prevented from rearming or selling their leftover war droids, as having any of these things fall into the hands of the rebels was a genuine fear for the Emperor. It is known that they had millions of unsold Pistoika sabotage droids, and it is likely that many buzz droids did leak onto the black market, but that's about the only real effect they had in this era. But they did survive through the Imperial Era by laying low, not resisting in any way, and this was a far better fate than that other famous bug race that joined the Separatists, the Geonosians, who like them were great engineers, produced just about all the other tech used by the CIS, but the Empire exterminated them. By the time the Empire fell at Endor, in the rise of the New Republic, who despite its lofty morals was often naive and unable to secure anything, we can assume that during this era, the Colicoids were back to establishing their galactic trade networks again, clicking away over trade deals while digesting some sacrificed interns. That's it for the breakdown. Please hit that like button, it's the best way to help me out. But most important of all, remember, never trust a space bug, and the Force will be with you. Always.